problems, it's important to understand that nothing is life or death. And a lot of our struggle comes from us projecting fear and potential negative outcomes into the future. But I think that when we do that, it's important to ask ourselves how many things we've worried about before in the past that have never came true. And then just shifting yourself back to the present moment. Because how you envision something going down doesn't have any correlation towards like what's actually going to happen. How many times have you believed something to go one way, but it actually goes a completely opposite way? I think also when we think about how we manage the stress that we feel regarding the future, we have to compare it and also just be mindful of how we help people we love with their stress regarding the future. And what I mean by that is when you're helping someone out, like when you're helping someone navigate situations and anxiety they have towards the future, you're very rarely encouraging worst case scenarios and stressing over potential negative outcomes. But a lot of the times we do that for ourselves. And I think it's important to ask ourselves, if we aren't doing that to other people, then why are we doing that to ourselves? And also, is that beneficial? And I think the obvious answer is no, it's not beneficial. You know, when you're dealing with your own situations, it's easy to be very hypercritical about everything. And when you're dealing with other people's situations, you can kind of see everything with a little bit more clarity because you're detached from what's going on. But I think taking the same approach when we deal with our own stuff can be very beneficial. I think when it comes to the way that you talk to yourself, using discernment is really important. And what I mean by discernment in the context of self-talk is just understanding what thoughts that I get that I need to listen to. Because I think as people, oftentimes we can get a lot of different thoughts, but you need to know which thoughts to feed into, which thoughts to encourage, and which thoughts to just simply allow to pass. And what I've found for myself is that thoughts I get stemming from restless persistence are oftentimes thoughts that I need to let go of, compared to thoughts that come from a place of poise and steadiness. Those are often the thoughts that I can encourage and that I can feed into. What I mean by that is, you know, as you're navigating on a day-to-day, especially with adversity and conflict, a lot of times we feed ourselves those restless thoughts, things like, what if, you know, like worst case what if scenarios and negativity and things like that. But those thoughts stem from haste and restlessness and just fear internally. And I think it's important to understand that you would never feed your friend a what if scenario, like a worst case what if scenario, when they're worried about the future. You would feed them thoughts that stem from poise and tranquility and try your best to encourage and uplift their spirits. So I just think that the fact that we don't do that for ourselves is very interesting. And I think a lot of times I justify not doing that for myself when in reality I need to do the opposite. Staying present is also super important. Like I said earlier, half the stuff that we worry about doesn't even happen. I think a majority of the stuff that we worry about doesn't even happen. I've noticed that in the past, I've worried because I used to believe that me worrying was actually gonna solve the problem, or like I was gonna put myself in the mind frame to solve the problem. But I just realized simply that it's not the case. And worrying doesn't take away from tomorrow's problem, but rather today's peace. You never know where you're gonna be tomorrow. I think things can always look a certain way. Like, that's why I said earlier, nothing is life or death. And even the deepest wounds that we have over time heal. So in the moment we may have perceived it as life or death. Oh, what the? Like, even if you reflect back on the deepest wounds that you've had, in the moment it might have felt like life or death. And you project certain outcomes and possibilities into the future. But over time, you heal and you realize that it was never that deep. You always make it out to be worse than it is.